Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast episode, The Engineer Whisperer. So happy to have you here because today, well, honestly, I've been looking forward to this conversation. I invited my friend Amir to join me. So, Amir, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrea.
And
Happy
as
to be
we,
here.
yes, me too. And as we start, give us a little intro about you.
Yeah, sure. My name is Amir. I grew up in Alexandria, Egypt. Every day I went to school. This is elementary, middle, and high school. I would drive by the famous engineering faculty in Alexandria, and my parents and I would joke about one day me being an engineer and attending that school. And years go by, and I eventually joined the program at the Faculty of Engineering, Alexandria University. And I started my journey in engineering. The first year in Egypt is typically one where we study all of engineering, not necessarily pick any specific discipline. And really a good way of just getting exposed to the fundamentals of engineering, if you will.
Mhm.
And from there on, I picked a major that I thought would be fantastic for traveling and exploring the world. So I said, let me set out to be a marine engineer. So I joined the Department of Naval Architecture, Marine Engineering. And that was the start of my engineering journey. One thing I should say is I did in a summer internship, my first internship after the second year of engineering school, get to work aboard a ship, a commercial vessel that was transporting cargo from Alexandria, Egypt to South Europe. And I was on board the ship working in the engine room for a period of 3 months. And it was great, just an enormous learning opportunity for a young engineer. All he knows about engineering is what we've studied in the sort of textbooks and the theoretical part. But to actually be on board a ship, working in the engine room at the very bottom of the ship, seeing how this noisy place is sort of being managed and the amount of work that goes there, and how you never have a dull moment because if you're not fixing something, you're doing maintenance, overhauling systems or engines, dealing with prices sometimes and issues. So a fantastic opportunity, but one that is also very demanding physically. And I'm sure people know the way it works offshore. You end up working shifts, and the shift I had was working from 12 to 4 in the morning, like
Oh.
and sorry, in the afternoon, but also 12 to 4 in the morning. And that's how the shifts are divided for young engineers. As you graduate to more senior engineers, you take different shifts where you work 8 to 4, and that's it. It's a normal rhythm. But no one starts from 8 to 4 in the morning. You start one of the 4 hour shifts, and you do two 4 hour shifts a day. So that's how it was at the time. Long story short, I enjoyed the experience, but it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought engineering would be. So I was not fully satisfied. I wanted to maybe see if I could do something where design and building of ships as opposed to operating one. And that took me a completely different route and a different journey that I find myself in New York City when I was 19. Have sort of put my studies on hold for a bit to move to New York, go explore the world a little bit, learn English is my second language. But at 19, I was living in New York City, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next because I wasn't really fully content with my marine engineering experience. And it took me a couple of years to get back to engineering. So I eventually joined City College to study mechanical engineering. And from there on, I started a journey in or a career in engineering where I've worked in the defense industry for a little bit, then the oil and gas industry, and now I'm in the renewable industry. So that's a little bit about my engineering journey, and I'll save this for the second question. But my marine experience in Egypt and that internship and the couple of years that I spent in school in Alexandria have ended up shaping my career for what's to come. And I'll share more as we speak.
I'm so happy that you mentioned that because we take for granted these experiences um, where we learn the things that we don't want to do. We as young people, we almost shy away, or we tend to shy away from experiences that don't fit into that box of, well, this doesn't, it's not like it's not what I imagined. This is not really what I want. It's not
Yeah.
as shiny and pretty as we imagined it or planned. But then when we take these internships, these opportunities that are not so shiny, we pretty much learn the things that we don't want to do. And that is what's going to steer us towards the things that we really want to do. So I'm so happy that you shared that experience.
Thank you. Yeah, 100%. And my experience also taught me that when I stepped away from engineering for a couple of years, living in New York, sort of partying, discovering the world, and just taking a break from all of that to experience another world, was at an English school as a second language, learning about, some of the cultural issues in the US, like abortion, the death penalty. I remember reading The Godfather and watching the movie. So all of that with my experience as a young person, coming to age, living alone by myself in a big city, very far away from home, made me realize that I actually did really like engineering, and I could have went to study anything else or reset. Uh, and in New York, the world is an open laboratory. But I did realize that I missed engineering, and when I decided to go back to school, that was the career path I chose. So yes, you learn what you don't like, but you also learn what you miss.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, it's almost like the picture gets clearer.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
And
100%.
and that creates this inner peace of, okay, I've tried this, I've done this. No, I clearly know. And then like, but now my focus is so clear on this. Like
Yes.
like have this feeling of, I know I miss it, so that means I some emotional connection there. So I totally relate to that. And I mean, how fascinating at a young age you're saying that being brave to take the time to pause your studies to kind of ask yourself those questions like, what's next? Do I really want to continue with marine engineering, or do I want to do something else? And it's almost like taking a pause and asking the big question of, well, what do I want to do with my life? I don't know if that question showed up for you, but it's essentially pausing everything that society says you have to go do, have to go, be in college, learn, I don't know, get a job. Like that pausing is so important in our lives. And I just want to emphasize it again for those who maybe are thinking about, maybe you can do 2 years of pausing in your life, but maybe you can do even just a few weeks, a
Yeah.
month, a few months to reset, as you said, Amir, reset and give yourself a chance to find the things that you miss so that you can full-heartedly go for it. So let's get back to your story because
Yeah.
we are here today to hear more about your story, what it's like to be an engineer, what are the mindsets that you had that you found challenging and so forth. So let's get back to your story as of you know, what was challenging for you then once you decided, okay, I'm in New York, I'm alone, but I know what I want to do, and then to jump back into engineering.
Yes, absolutely. So I just want to comment on your commentary here, the self-discovery piece or the pause. That is, I think, not to be taken for granted. That I feel like if I hadn't had the pause, maybe I could be facing a midlife crisis right now in my 40s,
Oh,
50s, and that happens to a lot of people. Is
yes.
they do exactly what is expected of them, especially engineers. They're very methodical. They're very analytical, and everything is somewhat black and white. But the real world isn't. So just having that time to kind of step away, step back, it's not wasted time. I'm not promoting, for every engineering student to pause and go discover themselves. But I'm saying, my experience particularly was so beneficial because I got to really be at ease and at peace with my decisions moving forward. And then today, I don't feel like I need a break because I did not necessarily follow a prescribed path where people eventually get burned out. So I just wanted to share that with the audience that we each have our own journey. I want to maybe just take this opportunity to tell a story of one of my great colleagues who, and maybe a couple of colleagues who have taken completely different paths. And there's nothing to say that one is better than the other. So this gentleman who went to engineering school with me, he was a brilliant engineer, joined one of the big engineering firms in upstate New York, and had some patents. He was working in complex engineering products such as jet engines and turbines, gas turbines, and things of that nature, where he was specialized in blade designs and some complex items. And he's done that for 6 years directly out of engineering school. And then then and there, he decided he was not fulfilled doing that, and decided to join a program for social science called STS, Science and Technology Studies, still related to some of the work he's done, and went and got his PhD at Cornell. Today, he teaches at Northwestern. He just wrote a phenomenal book that ties engineering and science. And that's just a completely different journey. I've had another colleague. I went to school in New York City. It was a very diverse place. So a lot of us were from other countries, and then got our bachelors and went a different ways. So one gentleman was Greek, and he took a completely different journey where he got his degree. He was happy to have a degree and went to engineering degree and went to run his family hardware store business back in Greece. And he has a great life with an engineering degree. Another fellow in engineering, obviously, I keep saying it's guys. There were ladies also. They were very bright, always smarter than the guys. But the guys have an interesting path sometimes. The ladies were so bright, they ended up becoming professors or executives in companies. The guys always took or oftentimes took different routes. This one gentleman got his MBA right after engineering school and went a completely different route in business. Never really did any engineering design or analysis. And so just sharing some examples of the journey sometimes takes you to places, and joy is in the journey, really, not the final destination. And it's the life of an engineer or a professional is a life of discovery about what you could do, what you could bring to the table. So having said all of that, I want to take that back to my journey. So pressure, yes, there was difficult decisions that needed to be made. Pressure from my parents to move back home and finish my degree and stop wasting time living in New York City on my own. And I needed to react to that. And my reaction was, I know what I like, and I want to go back to studying engineering, and was really looking to go back to studying naval architecture and marine engineering. But the number of schools offering that major were limited in the US. And New York had a couple of schools, but they were more military academies where the tuitions were very high, and the admission process was not as easy. So I picked the next closest thing to marine engineering, which was mechanical engineering, and managed to complete my degree, and had an internship in the interim. And when I graduated and I was ready to enter the workplace, my internship at sea many years before came in handy. So I ended up getting a job in a naval architecture firm in New York City. And that was the beginning of my engineering career in New York City, working for a defense contractor that designs and builds ships for the US Navy. We had multiple interesting projects because there are no shipyards in New York. So I got to work on many things related to the oceans, the estuaries, the rivers, the fireboats. My first project was one where we worked on marine transfer stations that
Oh,
transports the garbage of New York City via barges. And you can imagine like how much garbage New York City
wow.
generates, biggest city in the US,
Yes.
24/7, and a huge amount of garbage being produced and being transported out of the city via trucks. And the project was sustainable before sustainability was a thing. So this is, again, looking 20 years ago.
Yes.
We designed actually nine transfer stations at the time that will put the trash from New York City in containers. And then we had to design a port, nine ports in different locations, very congested area, congested space. And again, it's a marine operation where you put everything in a container, put them in a barge, ship them outside of New York. And that was really a start of a very interesting career in offshore in general, the maritime industry, oil and gas, offshore. I think people call it differently now, offshore wind. So just all marine offshore related. And oftentimes, you don't plan a career that way, but sometimes, again, one thing that you do, one internship can influence the shape of what you might do for the next 20 years. I didn't know that back then, but it has been a wonderful journey, and a lot of discoveries. Got to touch some fascinating projects, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about some of them here.
Samir, tell me what was your mindset as you entered the workplace? So I can already hear the passion in your voice right now, even if as you're talking about something that was 20 or 20 some plus years ago, I can hear the passion in your voice. So so what, like what mindset kept you to keep this feeling that's coming through your, the screen and through your voice?
Yeah, I think it was always the desire to learn more, and that is something that you see a lot of engineers are hungry for knowledge and for understanding. We want to know how the world works, and we want to also be able to build things that work and help the world move on, or get to a better place. It's tinkering, at times. One of my professors would tell us a lazy engineer is a good engineer, is one that wants to automate things and sit back and watch the machine do the job on their behalf. And I always like that sort of analogy is, yeah, if there's a way for us to build machines or things that can improve the quality of our life so we could have more leisure time, uh, that's a win. I think it was always for me hunger to learn and discover. I was also quite interested in applying what I learned in college to what I do at work. And that prompted me to, when I got my job as a naval architect, ocean marine engineer, I went to get my master's as a part-time while working full-time. And that's because I wanted to bolster my knowledge and apply that to what I do on a day-to-day basis. Oftentimes, there's quite a big gap between what the industry does and where academia sits. Academia is always far ahead, and
Yeah.
the industry, because it's applications, you end up using just a fraction of
Yeah.
the knowledge and the skills that you learn at school. So it's always hunger to learn more academically and bring that onto my day-to-day work. And it was frustrating at times because, again, the gap is huge between what's available that time. We were talking about parametric, the finite element analysis software this is the 2000s. We're coming out 3D modeling, and it's more sophisticated, advanced, as opposed to what was done in the past 80s or 70s. Or even the 90s. The 2000s had, a revolution in information technology in general and software development. So we had Pro Engineer, SolidWorks. Those were coming out as I got out of school. I was trained on those tools in school. Meanwhile, the office environment and the work environment were relying on 2D AutoCAD. no one knew what ANSYS was or how to do finance. We were still doing, by hand analysis. Um, AutoCAD was a go-to tool for any sort of commercial work in the office. So it was a mix of, bringing the technology to work and hunger to learn more. And that really prompted me to, after 6 years in defense, sort of doing interesting work for different branches of the government. So I've had one of my most favorite jobs is working on the buoys that the US deploys across the coastal US and across the Pacific. These buoys can detect tsunamis, they can detect the weather. And what a phenomenal experience for a young engineer to be able to work at a place where the mission is to produce data and share this data with the public so that they could understand the weather phenomena is happening around them, or have a warning system where a tsunami is coming, so they have 15 minutes to prepare. And our purpose was data. So we generated good, reliable data, shared that with the public at no fee. So it's not a business that was there for profit. And those systems were run by engineers. I was an ocean engineer working on brackets and designs for the buoys and things that we could do to make it easier for the technicians to swap the sensors or make it make the installations more reliable to continue to transmit data to the public. And having said all of that, I think that as I was finishing my master's, I wanted to do something that was like even deeply more engineering. And that prompted me to move to Houston and start a new career in oil and gas. And we'll tell you more as we speak.
Well, I won't stop you. I was just thinking as of when you said that you wanted to do something more deep engineer. I was like, where I haven't heard that term, but I like maybe you mean by deep as of the drilling and oil and gas that you're going deep. Well, so I think the answer to my question is, what got you to move into that kind of, within engineering, that industry is your sense of learning. You wanted to explore and learn more. But before I ask the obvious, let me ask this that I think some of my audience is asking. Um, if you think back, what are some of your transferable skills that you moved from the, maritime engineering into oil and gas? If you could share with us.
Yeah, that's a great question because you always have experience to lean back on.
Yeah.
So as a design engineer, I knew how to make a design, how to write a specification for components that you buy. Because most engineers, when you're a design engineer or any kind of discipline, it doesn't really matter if you're mechanical, electrical, industrial or chemical. Oftentimes, engineers are designing systems, and you're specifying how the system fits together. And in order to do that, you have to go through a design process, sometimes analysis, and then you're writing specifications to buy equipment. And then as you buy this equipment, you put it together. You're commissioning this equipment, installing, then commissioning, and then there is the O&M, which lives for 20 years or 30 years. The sort of design to build phase is typically 2 to 5 years, depending on the industry. Oftentimes, when you're working for the government contracts, the cycle could be very long. And in oil and gas, depending on where you sit, the cycle could be shorter. And renewable, offshore wind, particularly where I am now, the cycle is very long. And that's driven by permitting and availability. And it's a new industry that is coming to the world here recently, which is a great development. So you always build on the experiences that you have before, and this is one of the biggest recommendations I make for any young engineer. Yes, we all want to move up with our careers, and we want to go to the next step. But if you don't get to taste what it's like to design something, if you just have to do it once in your career or twice, but at least you go through the process from designing all the way to installation and commissioning. Be able to write a spec, work with the procurement team to get the experience of what it's like to buy a sophisticated piece of kit that could be hundreds of millions of dollars at times. And that's a valuable experience. It helps you in your next career when you become maybe more less of a technical person, more of a business person. A lot of engineers end up running businesses that they work in, which is great. Some engineers don't even want to dabble with the technical piece, but I think you miss a huge opportunity to have those skill sets because it makes you a much stronger business leader when you know how the product works and how it all comes together. So I think it's a balance. In my particular case, I spent 10 years of my career in engineering. And when we talk about deep engineering, I was a hydrodynamicist. After 6 years of being a design engineer, I went like even more geek in engineering, where I was dealing with data, I was dealing with analysis that was complex, and I was just having so much fun doing that. But then again, it's not something that you want to do for a long time as an engineer. I know some people, that's their career. They're an analyst of a sort, or they pick up something technical and they do it for 20, 30, or 40 years. And that's fine. But a lot of engineers have uh, good skills for managing business, and they end up naturally moving to the business side of engineering, whether they're running an asset or a field or a fleet. All these skills require some engineering judgment, knowledge of the technical product, but also the business piece, which is where it took me quite a bit of time to get comfortable in switching from a pure technical person into one that can read contracts, deal with complex business issues, be able to engage with lawyers and business leaders and make
Oh,
business
yes.
decisions based on a technical product or a technical delivery or a project that we're delivering on behalf of the customer or on behalf of the public. So that is also a very interesting route to go from a world where everything's black and white, the numbers tell the story, and the world is clean, if you will, versus one where the business world is everything is gray. You know, the contracts are subject to interpretation. The
Yes.
business decisions are not necessarily oftentimes driven by doing the right thing, but doing the thing that saves the most money or is right for the business. And those are not decisions that benefit engineers, especially at this day and age. I think if we go back maybe 30 years ago, engineering was a glorified industry. The voice of an engineer was like the voice of a judge, and the judgment of an engineer was considered all the way up. But
Yes.
today, companies and businesses are running on a different spectrum where the bottom line, the shareholder interest, the ability to do sustainable production of products and services that changed the landscape. Engineering, I think I wanted to make sure we talk about this for the upcoming engineers who may be interested in a career in engineering. Yes, engineering is great, but it also has been commoditized such that you could buy engineering services now at any place in the world, and there is a price tag on that. An
Yes.
engineer in India or Malaysia is $30 to $40 an hour, let's say. And big companies will go buy hundreds and thousands of hours of engineering from these places. In Dubai, it might be $70. In Europe, it's $100 to maybe $120 an hour. And then in the US, it's anywhere from, depending on what you do, but it's 150 all the way to $300 in some places in oil and gas. So engineering is as interesting and as complex as it is to study. It has become a commodity that the business leaders can buy and sell. However, the skills that you gain in engineering schools and in the engineering practice qualify you to become a great business leader that makes those decisions and decides whether or not to treat engineering as a commodity that you buy or invest, or one that you invest on and have the best engineers to launch something that was never done before or something that is a breakthrough. So didn't know that at the time because engineering was not as commoditized as it is today, but that's a change that I've seen also over the past 20 years where unfortunately for engineering, it's something that is now available as a commodity. And I don't know if it stays like that for a long time, or this is just a phase, and we go back to valuing and respecting the product of engineers. Um, but it is a reality that we deal with.
Yeah, it is in the present, and I'm happy that you mentioned it, that brought it up today as almost like a third option, because I want to say that as I'm working with engineers, prior years, the question was, Andrea, help me figure out if I want to stay in the technical route, or do I want to, switch to business/leadership? And then what you're bringing up is this third option of technical business leadership, and then engineering as a commodity where, you can be specialized in something very, very marketable, and then you can put a price on it. So,
Yes.
and still,
And marketable there, this is a great way to think of it, is a niche, is something that is sophisticated enough to where you have just a handful of people in the world that can do that. And
yes,
that exists today. So in hydrodynamics, there are, a handful of people. I know in generators, for example,
yes,
and certain specialties, pumps, I'm sure there are areas in pump design that are just a handful of people in the world that know or have that capability. And those tracks are still available for folks who really want to stay and take the technical track. But it cannot be like a design engineer that can generate a drawing, because that's the part that is fully commoditized. And that drawing could be about, a structural design or a mechanical design or a power plant development, or just the usual stuff, civil works. A lot of that is just fully commoditized.
yes, 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 yes. Well, I'm wondering, how did you, you know, kind of, as you're thinking back at your journey, what what was you know one of your learning curves, something that you had to learn along the way to kind of to keep true to yourself? And I'm talking about to yourself, not as an engineer, but as a human being and then an engineer.
That's a great question. I think, the learning curves occur all the time. They become steeper at certain points in life. And depending on what you do in your career, and so let's maybe just talk about the career and the family. I think on
Sure.
the family side, becoming a father, and I have two young boys, and that was a big transformational moment in my life when I became a dad. And it's a great thing to be a dad and watch your children sort of grow and prosper and be at times smarter than you or better than you in certain skills. Like one of my sons is really into wrestling, and I was a chess pro. I was never into. I wanted the sport or the activity or the hobby that required the least physical engagement. Yet my son likes to fight for fun, and wrestling is really violent for me, but that's what he likes. Good for him. And just to watch him do that and get to have sort of a different path is just really phenomenal. And I'm still trying to inject on my boys the love for math and engineering and science, and then they're curious and interested, but I'm not imposing anything on them. I think we talked about the different journeys, and people have their own choices, and I think the journey matters more than the destination. In terms of professional, so every time I made a leap in my career, and today I continue to make these leaps, and I'm learning a lot. So when I moved from defense into oil and gas, a huge learning opportunity, just a phenomenal industry to be part of, oil and gas, and it's just highly technological, very capable, uh, fast cycle because the industry is profitable and it's not relying on handouts from the government or handouts from subsidies. It's a self-sustained industry in so many ways. So uh, the technology was always getting better, and you're part of that, and there's a lot of learning. But that was a steep learning curve to move from a simple type straightforward engineering to something that was more sophisticated. Then 10 years into that career of just engineering, design, products, to move to a commercial role where I didn't know anything about contracts and was not really a great reader to begin with. I remember at engineering school, I got D in my English 101. And and that was good actually because I didn't want to read the books that were assigned. I've come to read these books later when I got really interested in reading. But that shift happens as well. I was interested always in the equations and the things that make sense as opposed to reading The Great Gatsby or
Yes, I totally relate that regarding my son who's studying to be an engineer. It's like, yeah, I have to read this, Mom, really? I'm like, well, you always have choices.
yes. What kind of engineering is he studying, or he hasn't decided yet?
He's studying mechanical engineering.
Mechanical, yeah.
Yeah.
Mechanical is great because it just offers a broad spectrum of choices once you graduate. You could still, as a mechanical engineer, work in electrical equipment or aerospace, or it's just one of the
Yeah,
the the
we'll
great,
see.
yeah. I think electrical engineering for me is one that will be the most difficult if you were to ask me. It just requires a different mindset versus all the other engineering discipline. I this idea of signals and signal process is always, I think you almost have to have a mind for it. I'm always fascinated by electrical engineering and what they do, radar technology and
Well, that's why
how.
you find a friend who's an electrical engineer and
That's right. Yeah,
then
I don't have to do it. Yes, you need a
like
different mindset for that.
there you go. That's why I
Yeah.
say everyone should have an engineering friend. So, somebody with that mindset.
Yes.
Um, because you need that mindset in your network, in your friendships. Well, take
Yes.
take us back. So you said that for you it was hard to get into English, contracts, reading, but then once it became part of the learning, you did it, and everything that you shared with us so far, you don't shy away from learning, and especially when it has a purpose, and it's part of you see it as part of your journey. So reading. What was something else that um,
Yeah,
was
learning really to be in the gray space and be able to make good decisions where the world is no longer black and white and the numbers
oh
don't tell you the full
yeah
story. And
yeah
that comes again from the commercial experience when you're negotiating and interfacing with a customer or another entity that sees the world differently, and you're trying to bridge the gap. And oftentimes it's about, like I said, a project, a product, but people have varying views about how the world should work. And that shows up, and the product is there, and everyone is interested in the best product, but there are some business elements that govern the transaction or the exchange. And that was just a wonderful lesson that the world of business is one where it's always gray. And it's really great to be able to be comfortable in this world of gray and yet having the and lived and been comfortable in the black and white mindset. So a lot of people who end up in business oftentimes are ones who studied business or economics or social sciences, which is great. They're trained from a young age to live in the gray and be able to
right yeah
defend their arguments and
yeah
articulate their arguments, and that
yeah
sort of great tradition of bringing different views together and arguing for your view is part of their training. It's not necessarily always part of the engineering training, especially in
yes
today's day and age where there are also a lot of subjectivity. So engineers tend to be very objective in how they come into a decision, but the world doesn't work that way. So that's a great learning, and one that I continue to sometimes question myself, like, do I want to be in the gray or in the black and white? And sometimes I'm bouncing back and forth in between, and depending on the situation, depending on who you talk with, uh, you could be influenced as well and change your mind. That's one. One that I'd like to share is, as of recent, I was looking for a hobby. something to do that will sort of take my mind, working with my hand, take my mind away from work in the day to day. And I went back to my roots. So I remember when I was a young child, I used to love taking down my toys and breaking them apart and getting to the motor. And I would take the motor, connect it with a battery, and just do whatever I wanted with it. And that was always like every toy I've ever owned would end up with a motor, a battery, and me tinkering with that. And today, as I'm in my late 40s, I find myself going back to engines. And I love tinkering with, I'm working with small engines now, restoring old tractors, lawnmowers. And I take a lot of satisfaction on that because, like, my day to day business is really mostly business. I work in complex negotiations or customer issues, customer interfaces. Um, Commercial negotiations, and that work is very dry. And just having the hobby or the thing that I could do at home in the weekend where I could use my hand to tinker and brings me back to hardware where the world we work in today is all digital.
Yeah.
But this is a world, especially if you go back to the old technologies of the 40s and the 50s and even later, it's all mechanical. You had to pull a lever to get the machine to do one thing. You pull a different lever to release, and that is just phenomenal. How ingenious folks at that times were, as compared to what we have now, where there is a chip that runs everything. And if that chip is malfunction, you can't fix it. You just have to order a new one. And
Yes.
oftentimes, that new one is more, or the circuit board is more expensive than the entire product if you were to buy an entire TV. So I like to tinker and fix things from vacuums to anything that breaks around the house. My family is ready to dispose of it. And I'm like, no, I'm not letting it go. I want to open it up, see it, at least take a stab at fixing it. And it just brings me a lot of joy. And I think that part connects me back to my roots. I wish I would have picked up that hobby earlier, but I was busy doing other things. So,
Well, as they say, never too late. And here you are. You picked it up. So I'm so happy to hear as you were sharing, I was thinking that you picked up your kids' toys and you were taking those apart. And I was thinking that might cause some conflict. But if you're not taking your kids' toys apart, then you're fine. So they're
yeah,
fine, you're fine, the relationship is fine, the marriage is fine. So you put me at ease when you said tractors and
yeah.
small engines. So it's
Yeah, they do
important.
give me. This is funny you ask because they do give me their toys when they stop working to
Oh,
fix it,
yes, of
and I
course.
never miss an opportunity to. Again, I don't always fix them, but it's an opportunity to tinker with it, and I
You
do.
you mentioned that you are, talking to them about engineering. Well, throw out the talking. Just show them about when the whole tinkering and taking things apart, like that is engineering. You don't even have to mention engineering. The
They,
the the
they
fixing their
know.
toys is
I
so.
think they appreciate. This is really cool. You mentioned so they appreciate it, but they're not impressed by it, or they never want to tell me like how cool. So here I am, riding a tractor from 1945, and I think like I've just conquered the world, and they look at me like, oh. Why is this so exciting? Like what's a big deal, So there's that tension also ongoing.
Well, because they don't understand yet. But as I said, it's a not yet. I'm
Yes,
encouraging you to keep going because what they're gonna see is your passion, your love. They're gonna see what you feel.
that's
And
true.
even though they don't understand what the tractor is and how much work you put into it, but they see everything on your face. And believe me, I'm a 19-year-old, and when he remembers some of the things that we've done with him, like, you remember that? Of course, Mom, I remember that. Of course, Dad, I remember that. So
That's
again,
cool.
just you keep doing these things that matter to you and bring you joy.
Hmm.
Because I really believe as parents, that's how we can teach them and prepare them to then later on in life to make those decisions where it's about, do I want more money or do I want to do something that brings me joy? And if they
Hmm.
never met anyone who, if they never seen anyone who is in joy, literally, then they won't be able to choose to make that choice
Yeah.
because society is pushing us to, be successful, make more money. I don't know.
Yes.
So that's an important
100%.
part.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And making money and being successful is also an important part. And I think engineering provides a platform where people really could excel, just taking this back to engineering and do well. I was very successful in my career and I pushed hard and I managed to get, you know, kept on going up. But there comes a point too where I think in life you have different priorities. Some people seek, and get a lot of satisfaction from the rat race, if you will, which is great if that's what you're cut out to do and you're good at it. It's cool. But at times too, you have to decide. I think like where is enough and how much time I want to dedicate to work versus how much time I want to just enjoy my life. And I think like my advice to young engineers and to your audiences who might be deciding on how hard they want to spend their early years in engineering. My advice is spend all the time that you have building your career and learning and moving as high as you can, because that's what you do in the first 10, 15, 20 years. And then hopefully you're at a place after that where it's steady state and you're satisfied with the work you do on a day-to-day basis, but it doesn't define who you are. It's you
Mhm.
have a life, you have a family, you have things that matter in addition to work.
And a
You,
hobby, at least one
yes,
hobby.
at least one hobby.
There
Yes,
you go.
yes, yeah.
Well, Amir, as we're getting close to the end, I feel like we could talk for many more minutes. Um, but let's wrap it all up, and I would like to invite you to close us out. What would you like to leave us with? You shared a lot with us. Maybe there's something that you haven't shared. I don't know, but as think about this opportunity to again um, share your wisdom with the next generation, what would you like to share?
Yeah, I would start by saying, engineering is a wonderful career for people to pursue. It's a great choice for education. You don't necessarily have to do engineering once you get the degree. The world is an open canvas, but the engineering education prepares you to take on various challenges and do things that were not done before, because you learn really how to be a good problem solver. And you have the tools, the sort of technical tools, the scientific method that allows you to tackle those issues. The other thing I would say is for folks to take the risk. You don't have to follow any specific path. Take the risk in your own career. If you get an opportunity to go to Singapore for a year or two, which I had that opportunity, I went, and it was fulfilling, and it was great. I went to the Middle East, worked in Saudi and Dubai for a couple of years. I worked in the Netherlands. I was in Houston. I was offshore. So take the risk on your life and your career, and bring your family with you, and don't be comfortable. So just stay hungry, stay challenged, and take some risk along the way.
And what I'm hearing from you is always remember who you are, and if and always work on becoming a better person. So on that note, Amir, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for sharing with us today. I greatly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Likewise, looking forward to catching up some more. All the best.